we have some economic problems. And actually, as far as the rest of the country goes, we're kind of a laughing stock in a lot of ways. And in some ways, Rauner is kind of made it worse. So I'll just fill you in a little bit. Rauner, he's a very wealthy, successful businessman. He's a Republican. He's conservative, and he won the election, I guess, about 3 years ago. And the state of Illinois, for a number of years, has had a lot of budget problems. We had $10 billion in unpaid bills, if you can imagine that. And since Rauner has taken over, we haven't had a budget in 2 years. And our pension system is underfunded by tens of billions of dollars. So as far as Rauner goes, when he won the election, he thought he was going to change a lot of things, but what he forgot, really, in my opinion, was that Illinois, even though they elected a conservative Republican, we're still kind of we're a Democratic state for the most part. And what he's had to deal with is some people that still run Illinois state government, like Speaker Madigan, who has his own ways of doing business. And the problem is, Rauner really hasn't been able to be flexible. He wanted to bring businesses into Illinois without having them maybe use unionized workers. He wanted to cut back on a lot of social services, things like this that the Democrats downstate, they really didn't want to do. So they really haven't been able to come to any agreement. So because he hasn't really achieved anything, and just as Pat said, she thinks hasn't done a good job, and maybe a lot of other people, Democrats, they kind of smell blood in the water, like he can be beaten. Even though he's a wealthy businessman, he hasn't really accomplished much, so a lot of the people are disappointed. And the fact is the election is, I think, about 1 year away in March. So I'm just going to give you a rundown on the Democratic side, because obviously Rauner's going to be the Republican candidate. So right now we have 3 or 4 candidates, and it's pretty much shaping up to be an interesting election. So the first candidate that's declared is Christopher Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's son. Isn't that exciting? No? Well, actually, I think he's the favorite just because of his name recognition. If you don't know much about Chris Kennedy, he manages the Kennedy family business. He's worth, I think, a few $100 million because the Kennedy money was split up among different family members. So he's wealthy, and I guess you would say he's probably the typical liberal Democrat. And he's got to be the favorite just because of the name. Now, like I said, there's a few other candidates, some of who I know. One of the candidates that recently joined the race is State Senator Dan Biss. He's about 40, and I remember I was in a political group, and he actually gave his first speech when he was running for state representative about 10 years ago. And the interesting thing about Dan Biss is he's actually a mathematician from Chicago. And he lost his first race for state rep, but then a few years later he won. After that he became state rep, and he's a state senator after that. And he's considered he's from the North Shore, so he's the thinking man's candidate. And he's also one of the top fundraisers in the state of Illinois. He's raised millions of dollars for, I think, the recent campaign for the presidential election. I think he put some money to go against Trump. So he's a very good fundraiser, and he's kind of just, he's a progressive, liberal Democrat, but as far as finance and budgets and stuff like this, he's probably a bit more conservative. And he's actually the person I'm supporting. And you might be thinking, why is John telling me all this boring stuff? The reason I'm telling you this is because, like I said, our state is a joke. Even California, that has had budget problems, they've fixed most of their problems. They look at us as a basket case, the rest of the country. And aren't we better than this?
Yes.
When the next election comes a year from now, don't we really want to elect someone that's going to get this once great state back on its feet, really turn it around? Now, maybe we can't get a Lincoln, but hopefully we can get second best. Our third candidate is another interesting young man. His name is Amaya Pawar, and I actually saw him give a speech too in the same group. It's Northside Democracy for America, and this was a little over 5 years ago. And he was a Northwestern student. I think I'm not sure if he was a business or a law student, and he was running for alderman. And I think the alderman had retired, and he was running against the machine candidate. And as most people that know Chicago politics, it's almost impossible if you're a nobody to be the machine candidate or someone that's already been there. And I think he's of Indian descent. Not that it matters, but after he had given his speech, I was kind of grilling him a little bit. We all were allowed to ask questions, and I was like, how much money have you raised? And I think he said about 20,000 and this and that. Although he did give a good speech, and he talked about the Chicago issues very well. And one other thing he had done while in school is he had developed an app for potholes. So while he was going to run for alderman, he had a slick gimmick that, hey, I developed an app for potholes. How great is that? If I can do that, I can be your alderman. But sure enough, he won. To move ahead, he actually won. He got a lot of grassroots people to support him, and he became the alderman.
For what area?
It's like the 40-something ward on the north side. And since then, he declared to run for governor. Now, a lot of people might not take him serious, but the fact is, if a young man from Northwestern can become an alderman, which is a very powerful position, why not? So he's considered a serious choice. So those are three candidates. I think there's one or two lesser candidates, but I'm not going to talk about them because they're not taken seriously. These are the three main candidates. The last possible candidate is J.B. Pritzker. Who's heard of him? J.B. Pritzker. He's a billionaire. And I believe he ran for Congress when I was a kid, maybe 20 years ago. And the thing with J.B. Pritzker, he's one of these, I think he's Rahm Emanuel's, our mayor. That's his ally. But the thing about Pritzker is he's not really photogenic, he's kind of heavyweight, he's not charismatic, but he is very wealthy. And I think even when he ran for Congress, he really didn't do that well. But just the fact that he has so much money gives him a chance if he decides to run. Now, another interesting thing about the race is that Rauner has already, I believe, put $50 million into an account that can be used for the next political race that he has next year to scare people off. So this is just a little bit of overview of the race because I know everyone is so busy. But hopefully we'll look at the issues and see some of the candidates during the coming months and make the right decision. But until that time happens, we will all pray for the state of Illinois. Thank you.